And then we got our stethoscope when we need to listen to an athlete's heart or lungs.
Providing emergency care within seconds. Area high schools now have a backpack full of gear to help get athletes back to the game sooner. And it's not just physical injuries athletic trainers are dealing with. We'll have more on that coming up now on the Morning Medical Update. And good morning to everyone. It is Thursday, May 26th. We are so glad you're joining us today. We are live here on the field at Blue Valley North High School in Overland Park. And we're here to introduce you to the technology and the team that's helping our student athletes get back to the fields, to the courts quickly and safely. Also coming up today, we're going to be talking about protecting yourself and your team from injuries this summer, the must-have item for summer sports. In about 15 minutes, Dr. Hawkinson joins us with the latest COVID count and COVID headlines. And as we just mentioned, athletic trainers in our school districts are equipped with new tools to help student athletes physically and mentally. So get your questions sent in to us. You can send those to YouTube, Facebook, and email us at the Medical News Network. You can find links to those right there on your screen. Well, the images have become, sadly, all too familiar to all of us. Another mass shooting at a school in our country, this time in Uvalde, Texas, just outside of San Antonio, where 19 small children were killed, 2 teachers killed trying to protect those students. And since then, it has been emotions, concern, frustration, and quite frankly, anger that has been really running throughout all of our conversations. People are frustrated and not knowing what to do. This morning, we are bringing in Dr. Danielle Johnson. She's a psychologist here with our health system. Dr. Johnson, certainly not the way we wanted to wrap up the school year for our kids, and it's just hard to even imagine what the parents down in Texas are going through. We're glad you are joining us today because we just kind of want to talk about what we say, where we go to. And I wanted to start with something because one of my friends, who I actually happened to go to elementary school with, we sat in the 4th grade together, by the way. She posted this morning, and my finger got tired scrolling because it is a list of all of the school shootings that have happened. And I'm going to get down here, if I can, Dr. Johnson. It's really alarming when you see it on a long list, but down here at the bottom, Robb Elementary School. Dr. Johnson, you and I both have elementary school kids, and I don't think you have to have small children to have this really hit you right in the heart. So what do we do now? What do we tell our kids? What do we tell them now that it's continuing to go on?
Correct. And that's a hard conversation to have. And I think many parents are having that conversation because our kids hear about it. We bring it to them. We want to know if they have any questions and concerns that we can allay some of the concerns they may have. But you want to have an age-appropriate conversation. So if you have, an elementary student, that conversation will be different than a middle school or a high school student. But to really acknowledge what happened, I think we tend to want to avoid some of these conversations because they are frankly quite difficult. But we want our kids to know that we are a safe place for them to discuss these questions and comments and really honor their emotions and their fears, because this is a scary time when you think about kids at school having an elementary school day at the end of the school year and something tragically like this happens. So making sure we have some really good conversations and keeping that door open so our kids know, even if they have no questions today, in 2 weeks they might have a question, but that we're always here to talk and comfort and support them.
Dr. Johnson, I know when my daughter walked in the other day and the news of this was on, she asked if this was the shooting in Texas, and I had to just say yes. She's 9. We know it doesn't happen every day, and you think it's not going to happen to you, and I'm sure that's what those parents down in Texas thought. But I'm glad you brought up the appropriate age to talk to kids about this, because when do you start having that conversation? Because it is just simply the reality.
Correct. And I think for probably almost every major school district in this country, they have ALICE or some other kind of safety training that they do with elementary age kids. I remember when my oldest was in kindergarten and we got an alert about they were going to do some safety training. And as parents of a little one, you wonder what kind of safety training could they be doing with a kindergartner or a 1st grader or a 2nd grader? And it was truly, if there was an active shooter in the building, what would they do? And how they have kids, as young as kindergarten, really understand that this is a safety protocol. We do tornado drill warnings, we do earthquake warning, we do all these warnings, and sadly, but that's the reality, we do an active shooter warning. And so having kids as young as kindergartners understand that if there's an alarm that goes off, this is what we do. And this is what me as your teacher will do to keep you safe. And so I think starting with, as young as, a 5, 6 year old who's in kindergarten and letting them know school is a place to learn and have fun and grow. But also there's some unsafe things that could happen at school. And so talking to teachers and knowing what your school is going to do, but also as a parent to let your kid know that all the adults in your life are here to keep you safe, and we're going to do everything to keep you safe. And I think saying it that way, we have no guarantee. I mean, there's accidents that happen, things happen. We can't always safeguard our children, but to let them know these adults in your life that are important, we're going to do everything we can to keep you safe. And while it's scary to go through an hour's training, it's also important to let them know that we're doing this just in case. And the very rare chance that this could happen, we're going to keep you safe.
Just in case, yeah. But those drills are certainly a reminder of how much things have changed since certainly you and I were in high school. I know you handle and deal with children quite a bit, but I do want to ask you before we go, just advice for parents. This causes a lot of anxiety. I know I lost sleep on Tuesday night just wondering what in the world those parents are going through right now. But Dr. Johnson, it's sadness and it's heartbreak, but there's a lot of anger. What do we do with the anger?
We have to express it. I think, we both have, children. It's infuriating to think about the fact that kids went to school and didn't come home. And that's not the first time it's happened. And it seems like there's always some issue of some kind of violence happening. And I think we have to validate. But yes, this situation is anger provoking. It's horribly sad. I think many adults and many parents are quite just grief stricken throughout the world about this. And so having some trusted people to talk to about this and to get those emotions out, and to use that emotion to funnel towards change. I think we have to make some changes with how these things continue to happen. I don't have the magic solution or answer to how to stop it, but I believe that there is enough smart people in the world that we can figure out how to prevent, endless crime like this from harming our children and adults. That this violence is, there's no place for it, and so we've got to figure out how to do it. So if we can use our emotions and energy to really find some solutions and safeguards to keep us safe, let's go in that direction.
Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Always good to talk to you. Sorry it's about this, but we appreciate you and your insight as always. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Well, according to the CDC, there are school athletes account for about 2 million injuries every single year, which then equates to about 500,000 doctor's visits. And we know that an injury for a student athlete can be catastrophic, not just in the moment, but when it comes to their high school career, their college, or even a pro career down the line. But now there is an emergency kit helping players get back to playing.
This is not your typical backpack.
We have some spacers, some inhalers, and Epi-Pens.
Miles Wilcox is the athletic trainer at Blue Valley North High School. Wilcox has seen his fair share of injuries. High school athletes experience an estimated 2 million injuries, 500,000 doctor's visits, and 30,000 hospitalizations each year.
And we got our stethoscope when we need to listen to an athlete's heart or lungs.
This emergency bag is helping improve the athletic trainer's care of their student athletes. Inside, arm slings, bleeding control kits, a pulse oximeter and peak flow meter for breathing, and even an EMT tooth saver solution for knocked out teeth to protect it until the student athlete can make it to the dentist. And with this being the Midwest, our summers are beyond hot for the players. Temperatures on the field can reach up to 120 degrees, especially on AstroTurf.
Here we have our rectal thermometer. Just simply put it, we have a little device we hook our leads into. It's typically used for exertional heat illness when we need to measure and monitor core body temperature.
The American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons finds that teenage athletes are injured at about the same rate as professional athletes. What separates these injuries is that teens are often still growing, so in many ways, these injuries can be more difficult to treat.
All right, we want to check out, we have some information ways to avoid injuries for your teens. Just simple things like making sure that they wear their protective equipment, not just some of the times, not most of the times, but all of the times. That means mouth guards, helmets, knee pads, you name it. Also understanding the importance of not just doing the work, but coming and doing the post-work and pre-work with warm-ups, cooling down, making sure they're even doing that at home. And I think this is the most important, just the communication between you and your kid and making sure they're informing you of any pain that they're experiencing, even if it's minor pain, because we know that minor pain can turn into something major and catastrophic. So we joining us now to talk about that is in the video. Also, Doug Weisner, he's our sports medicine program director at the Sports Medicine Performance Center here in Overland Park. So, Doug, great to have you. Caitlin Truhe, good to have you as well. We're going to talk with you in just a moment. But Miles Wilcox, you're a Blue Valley School District trainer. So, kind of walk us back through some of the things that maybe we didn't see in the video. Show us kind of this bag of tricks and what you got going on in it.
Yeah. So the hospitals provide us a lot of tricks, a lot of tools.
Yeah.
A couple of them, just a bleeding control kit just to stop the bleed, stethoscope to listen to the heart and lungs, trauma shears if we need to get to the chest to cut through jerseys, shoulder pads, chin straps, peak flow meter if a kid's dealing with an asthma or having an asthmatic issue, Epi-Pen if we have an allergic reaction.
And you actually have like an Epi-Pen
Trainer. Yeah.
It's not a real person.
No, that's not a real person. So some of the things that we do is we practice.
Yeah.
You know, we practice what we preach. And this is very easy to administer, but we still go through the practice every year. We have a trainer, and I'll say, Miles, here's the trainer. Pretend like you're actually doing this, and they'll stab somebody in the thigh, and hold it for a 10-second count. Rub the medication in. They pass. So it's something that we continually practice on all the time.
Even things like Epi-Pens, which have been around a long time, you think that you'd know how to administer them, but you never know when you're going to need it and how to do it properly.
And until you get into the situation, it's hard to say how you're going to respond. You know, and I have two here with me that have been in those situations. And he actually had to do this 2 years ago. And I walked into the school nurse's office one day, and the school nurse said, Miles saved a life. And I went, whoa, okay, tell me about what happened to Miles, because I don't think Miles told me about this.
Oh.
And she relayed that, you know, he had a struggling student athlete that showed all the symptoms, and he administered the Epi-Pen, and boom, she was fine. She responded. He knows the story a little bit better than I do.
What was it like, though, in that moment? We talk about that real-life moment. You can train all you want, but it's when that moment hits. What was that like? Doing your job.
Stressful. Your heart gets pumping, but then you just kind of rely upon your training, and your instincts kick in, and you just kind of take care of the situation as you were trained to.
But exactly, because you were trained.
Yeah, it goes back to training. You know, we continually do this. We practice our emergency action plans, you know, at least 3 times a year. Now, COVID has gotten into our way because we couldn't get together as a group the last couple of years. But we practice this, and we practice this, and we practice this so that when they get into the environment, it's just second nature. It just happens for them.
You hope you don't have to do it, but you're ready when you are.
Yeah, you hope you never have to do this, but you want to be able to do it and not have difficulties. So
you've got this bag. So tell us a little bit about how you carry this bag throughout a game or on the sidelines, and tell us how the process works.
Yeah, so as a high school athletic trainer, we're pretty much at every home event, and this kit is with us at all times. So really kind of no matter what happens, we're prepared to deal with whatever's thrown our way. So
you actually wear it around throughout the game, like a backpack, or do you just kind of have it sitting around?
It depends on the sport. With football, you know, it's sideline. Coaches know where it's at. We know where it's at. Basketball game is sitting next to us on the bench or in the corner by the table. So yeah, it's just readily available. And like I said, our coaches know how to help us if they need to get it for us.
So Doug, tell us a little bit about how things have changed over the last several decades. I mean, it is the least amount of time as possible, but so much has changed.
How did you know to ask me about several decades?
Right.
You know, when I cut my teeth in athletic training, it goes back to the days where we would have 2 days in August. And the thought process back then was, we'll give them a half a Dixie cup of water, and this will make them a tougher football player. we didn't have any of this stuff. We didn't have AEDs. We didn't have doctors on the sidelines. We didn't have any of that stuff. We didn't have emergency action plans. So, you know, the biggest change is their education. They're so much smarter than when I came out of school. They know so much more. They know so much more medical skills and technologies than when I came out of school. And so we continually educate them so that the next thing that happens, you know, Caitlin will talk about her mental health plan. And we started that 3 years ago. She'll talk more about that. But we always try to stay at the forefront, and you start looking around the country. What's happening around the country, and did I prepare them to handle those situations? So Dr. Smith and I, our medical director, we'll sit down, we'll go, okay, well, what do we need to do so that they're better prepared? How do we make them better athletic trainers? How do we help them to take care of their student athletes better?
Well, that cup of, that Dixie cup full of water, I could actually, that actually like vividly reminds me of what it was like to be, you know, at those games when we were younger. Yeah. And yes, I was in high school 3 decades ago, so I'm right with you.
Yeah, so you know, the standard of care back then was the standard of care. It's what we knew, and it's what we did. Today, we know, they know so much more, and so we're fortunate that we're able to provide them with all this stuff.
All right, so let's talk about this emergency action plan. Who wants to go on that one? And how does it work, and how does it help student athletes?
So we have an emergency action plan. So we have an emergency action plan for football. Baseball field's right there. The softball field's right there. Soccer is over there. He has an emergency action plan for each situation, each scenario. And then what we've done, or we've been able to do, is we've been able to send that out to Johnson County MedAC. And so they'll have that in their truck. Miles calls in and says, hey, I'm emergency on the soccer field. They bring it up, and they know exactly where the soccer field is. Remember this morning when you got here, you guys didn't know where we were. They'll know exactly where the soccer field is, and so they'll be able to send their truck there. And then what we'll do is we'll practice 3 times a year, different scenarios. So 2 weeks ago, we were out at Shawnee Mission South using their football field, and we would simulate a player down on the field, fully equipped, and Miles, go. You have a football player down. And we actually time them and see how fast their response is to getting them, you know, the equipment removed and getting them to an AED shock situation. And so it may be football, it may be exertional heat, it may be during the springtime because we have lots of pole vaulters that can't seem to hit all that cushiony padding, and they pole vault right into the track, and now they're laying there. And so we'll simulate different types of situations, and we'll put them in that situation and say, go, take care of them.
According to CDC, though, most injuries are preventable. So what do we do to help, what can parents do to help prevent some of these preventable injuries?
Yeah, I think it starts at home with the parents. Kids are getting proper sleep, proper nutrition, hydration, fuel, and then there's many activities out there. Our performance center has a lot of programs kids can get signed up in, and then even their local high school have camps, youth camps for all ages, for all sports. So just getting them basically ready to go for the season, keeping them active throughout the year.
What's the most common injury?
You know, ankle sprains, very common, always have an ankle sprain. Unfortunately, we deal with a lot of shoulder dislocations, someone tweaks the knee, and at that point, we got a good system in place to refer them out to our orthos and get really good care taken.
Caitlin, we are going to talk to you here in just a few moments because we're going to talk about mental health. I'm very interested to hear about this program that you started just a few years ago.
Yeah, we're very excited.
Who would have known 3 decades ago that this would be something that is front and center, and it's very, very important. So, but in the meantime, I'm going to send it back into our studio. Alexis Delson is standing by with Dr. Hawkinson to talk about our COVID count and some COVID headlines.
Thank you, Jess. Boy, isn't it great to see how prepared they are with that backpack?
Yeah, absolutely.
Want to talk about the COVID numbers as we're all heading into summer vacation season. How's it looking right now?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the COVID numbers are continuing to stay low, still in that single digits. Right now, in the hospital, we have 9 active infections, 2 in the ICU, 0 on the ventilator, and 11 in that recovery period. So although numbers for cases that are being identified are increasing, hospitalization is increasing a little bit, we are still doing pretty good as far as single single-digit active infections. So it's all good.
We have some big COVID-19 headlines that are in the news. And I'd love to get you to weigh in on these. The first one is that medical experts now say that this newest wave of COVID-19 is largely hidden from view. What does that mean? Why are they saying that?
Yeah, I mean, I think on some ways that's a good thing. You know, this is kind of what we had talked about on the show earlier this week. We know that the White House COVID response director, Dr. Jha, had talked about this as well. We had said there could be 2, 3, 4, even up to 5 times the actual amount of cases that aren't just being counted because people aren't going to test in those centers that report to the health departments, but are doing at-home tests or are not testing at all, but understand they probably have it because they were around people that have it. And we heard Dr. Jha say something like there is actually probably only 1 in 6 or 1 in 7 actual cases that are counted and reported. So I think that is what that means, is there are cases out there, but since our testing strategies are so different now, there aren't as many testing areas where you can go get those PCR tests that are reported. People are doing at-home tests or not testing. That is one of the reasons. But really what we are going to be looking for and what we have seen is that hospitalizations haven't really taken a big surge at this point in time, which continues to be a good thing.
Another story in the news is about Paxlovid. The CDC is warning that COVID patients who were treated with Paxlovid might have their symptoms rebound. So what would that look like, and why would that be happening? Yeah,
so certainly what they have seen in the Pfizer data analysis when they were looking at that drug, it looked like it was about 2% of people. We don't know the exact percentage now that Paxlovid has more supply and people are having more access to that. Certainly we know it's probably a fairly loud voice because of social media, so it could be compounding as far as how many cases are ongoing. But what people are seeing is they are taking that 5-day course. Remember, if you do get Paxlovid, it's vitally important to take that full 5-day course even if you're feeling better. And then a few days later, they start to have a rebound in their symptoms, which could be the same types of symptoms or even more severe symptoms. But what we should state is that right now they haven't found people developing more severe disease, again, have to go to the hospital, or death. And so that is a good thing as well. What are the mechanisms behind that? Those things are being investigated right now. So hopefully we'll have some more answers in the near future. But again, this was something that was identified early on in that Pfizer data analysis and the initial experiments, trials.
The third story that I want to ask you about involves gyms. So many people are finally getting back to the gym and they're exercising, but we know obviously that produces large amounts of sweat and everything, but now there's this new study that says all that sweat and particles contain the virus and could be raising the concerns about gyms and safety. How could it raise the concerns even more than what we've already had?
Right. Again, everything that's old is new again. I think we should take caution and note it's not spread by sweat. Okay, there was a recent study in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that was recently published that did say that people who were exercising hard and to extreme levels, very fit athletes, they were expressing or expelling up to 130 times more particles into the environment compared to when they are at rest. And so we know this is an aerosol, a droplet, an airborne, whatever your word may be, we know that it's spread through respiratory droplets or respiratory aerosols. And when you are exercising harder, you are breathing harder, expressing more particles into that air. And that is really the main point of that. So it's very important to have very good ventilation in those areas. And especially we know some of those classes can be packed pretty tight with people. So it's important to understand that when you are packed in close together, you are just expressing more of those particles out into the environment.
You're huffing and puffing and breathing.
Absolutely.
And so would you recommend then people go back to masking at the gym? I mean, you work out. You're into fitness. Like, what would you tell people?
I think it's hard. I think you have to make your own decision. I was wearing a mask up until, I don't know, probably 6 weeks ago in the gym. But when you're doing treadmill workouts, spin workouts on the stationary bike, or exercise classes, and you're doing that high cardio, that high intensity workout, it's very hard to wear a mask because you're going to be sweating through that. So it's very difficult. So I think it continues to be understanding what that risk is, of that situation. And if you need to wear a mask, then wear a mask. But certainly we know that that's a very difficult thing to do when you are exercising, sweating, and doing all of those things.
We're also getting lots of community questions. We're going to get to those in a little bit later in the show. We want to head back out to Blue Valley High School, though, with Jessica Lovell, and then we'll be back in just a few minutes with your community questions. Jess.
Hey, Alexis. Yeah, we're out at Blue Valley North High School. I have to you know how high schoolers are. They want to make sure that they're fully represented. So Blue Valley North High School.
Blue Valley North.
So I know you're going to be talking about and continuing this conversation about student athlete injuries coming up at 10 o'clock on All Things Heart. So we're going to look forward to hearing more stories about that and more information. But I want to reintroduce you to our guests out here at the school, out here on the field this morning. Doug Weisner, he is the Youth Sports Medicine Program Director at the Sports Medicine and Performance Center at the Health System.
Yes.
Good to have you. Yes, I got that right. And we've got Miles Wilcox. He's an athletic trainer for the Blue Valley School District. And then Caitlin Truhe, you are also an athletic trainer here at Blue Valley North.
Blue Valley High.
Blue Valley
Yes.
High. See,
Yeah.
I get them confused too, and I'm sorry. I grew up close to these parts, and I sometimes get them mixed up, but I want to make sure I have it accurate. We've been talking about the physical injuries. I want to turn to something equally, if not more important, the mental aspect. Tell us about the program that you have created and how it's going here with the students.
Yeah, well, we've been working for the last several years on building a mental health emergency action plan. So what that consists of is really an outline, a guideline for coaches, staff, athletic trainers, really anyone that's going to come into contact with an athlete who's in a mental health crisis, whether it's a non-emergent, something that doesn't need 911, physician, transfer of care, to a catastrophic injury where there has been some sort of harm of some kind. Whether to themselves or others, right? And it just gives us a plan that, because we never know, like we said earlier, how we're going to act or in an emergency situation. And so we have a plan in place that we have reviewed, we've practiced to know exactly how do we contact our medical professionals within our school, within our community, to get our student athletes to the help that they need as soon as possible.
Because I'm looking at all three of you, and I'm thinking, certainly during the pandemic, when we talked about when kids weren't at school, you are the kind of folks that people are with our kids at school all day. You're the one that sees them, you know them. Sometimes you get to know things that parents don't always get to know, so you're always keeping that cautious eye. What has been the response to incorporating sports and mental health, certainly on the high school level?
Yeah, one thing that Blue Valley ask their students is who their person is, right? Their person of contact within the building. And I have been fortunate enough to have some kids say that it's me, which is great, but that's really our purpose, right? In the school is to get to know the athletes on a personal level so that we could help them to achieve their goals on the field, because really mental health does affect their physical performance and their physical health just as much as vice versa.
Caitlin, being someone's person, that is
Yeah.
a big deal.
Yeah,
That is a really,
yeah.
really big deal, especially when it comes to our kids and being able to influence them. Doug, I want to talk about this because this is not just about the Blue Valley School District. We're talking about DeSoto, Shawnee Mission, you mentioned that, Lansing School District. Where else are we expanding? Tell us more about the program.
Well, we are expanding into those three other school districts, and those are our other three partner school districts. And so, as Caitlin said, COVID kind of slowed us down on this whole process. We couldn't meet, we couldn't get together, all this stuff. We couldn't implement things. But now we're starting to roll this out, and we're seeing a lot of positive responses from our other school districts. But not only that, KSHA, which is the Kansas State High School Activities Association, the governing board for sports in the state of Kansas, they're starting to address this situation. And so Dr. Smith, our medical director, is on the advisory board, their sports medicine advisory board. And he's taking it to KSHA so that eventually we have a plan throughout the state.
All right, Miles, I'm sure you are someone's person here at the school district. I'm sure there's a lot of kids that look towards you as well. What have you noticed just about the importance of making sure that you're checking in with kids, that you're not just there to protect their bodies, but their minds as well?
Yeah, I mean, just being available and seeing those signs or symptoms that many people may not. So the education that Caitlin's kind of put together and this program that we're implementing is really going to prepare us to deal with the whole athlete. Like Caitlin said, not just the physical, but the emotional and mental injuries as well.
Again, going back decades, Doug, decades and decades.
Yes, decades and decades.
You really wouldn't see that, though.
No.
I mean, it was, we always talk about, like you said, get your water, get your Dixie cup, get back out on the field. There's no crying in baseball, that whole thing.
Yeah,
so
and it was all about being a mentally strong person,
Yeah.
and if you couldn't handle that, you almost got washed out of the system. And
and equating that if you're physically strong, that means that you're mentally strong, which is not the
You're
case.
mentally strong, and that's not always the case, because when they're out here, they have successes, they have highs, they have lows, and sometimes those lows come in more than we want, and all of a sudden they're into a mental crisis. And Caitlin needs to be able to see that. Miles needs to be able to see that. We need to start being able to see that throughout. Coaches need to be able to see that, because these two are 1 in 500-600 student athletes. They're 1 in 500-600 student athletes, and so they have to share that knowledge, and they have to educate their coaches. And that's part of the emergency action plan, is not only our staff, but then Caitlin takes it back and shares it with the coaching staff. Here's what we're going to do in this situation. Here's what we're going to do in that situation. Here's what we're going to do with the mental health situation. So yeah, it's something we didn't see decades ago. It's something we didn't really want to look at. We might have seen it. We probably did see it, but we weren't educated enough in it. We definitely weren't educated enough in it, and so we left it alone.
But yet
and we left it alone too long.
Too long, but yet here we are today talking about it, and that is really good news. Social media has played a big part in what we understand to be big problems, and we know with the depression and anxiety and suicides that we've seen just recently. Caitlin, I'm sure you're aware of some of these high-level college athletes that have struggled. They're at the height. They're looked at, again, being strong, physically strong, and having the world at their feet. Yet there's something lying within. What is that correlation, though, when we talk about these high-level athletes and their mental health and not being okay?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's at all level. I think we talk about, we can go way deep into this type of
Sure,
conversation.
that's a whole other episode.
But yeah, but really, you talk about the pressure that the individual puts on themselves, right, to perform. I know that when I was an athlete,
What'd you play?
I was a volleyball athlete.
Okay.
Mediocre, but a volleyball athlete.
But
I did put a lot of pressure on myself, right? My internal dialogue to myself was not always positive, right? And so then when you're getting the external pressures from the coaches, from your parents, from your peers, from social media, right, telling you that you need to be better, you need to be the best, that just all weighs on you and can come out in lots of different ways, in stress, anxiety, depression, right, suicidal thoughts. It just depends on if there's been tools given to help the student athlete cope, if they can, and who they've seen in the mental health profession.
You're right. We could talk about this a lot, and we will continue to talk about it. So thank you for the work you're doing, the program that you've implemented and are getting out to our students and their parents. I'm going to turn it back over to Alexis, because as she mentioned, we've got some good community questions coming in. Alexis, what do you got?
Questions. All right. We have a question from Bridget Patterson, who wants to know if anyone can speak to the potential that there are drug interactions between, this is for Dr. Hawkinson, between Paxlovid and certain anti-seizure medication, like carbamazepine, I'll let you say them all. That. Since it's the go-to, Paxlovid is the new go-to.
Yeah, absolutely. We know, and in the website for Paxlovid, we know in the product insert or the PI for Paxlovid, they do discuss that. There are very readily obtainable tables that have your interactions with medicines you might be on. If you are getting prescribed medicines, please discuss with your doctor about those interactions. Again, because there are quite a few with Paxlovid. But just remember, Paxlovid is a short course of therapy. It is 5 days. If you start taking it, please take it that full 5 days. So really the interactions should be small and transient and short-lived, and should not affect you too much. But it is very important to discuss with your physician or your medical team who's providing you with those other medicines to understand that. There are very easy computer programs or websites as well that you can have drug interactions run to see exactly what those might be. So that's a very good question.
Joellen McGranahan has a question, and Jess, these are for our experts out in the field with you at Blue Valley North. What medical training or education is required for the high school trainers?
Go ahead.
I can take that, yeah. So, well, when Miles and I were in school, it was a bachelor's level degree. Now athletic training has transferred to a master's level. So you will start out and get your bachelor's degree in exercise science or, physiology, something related to the human body, and then go on to a master's of athletic training program. And then once you're done with that, then you can work out in the field.
So, Miles, is there continued training, though, throughout just different opportunities to learn and grow more?
Yeah. So the Board of Certification requires us to maintain. We have to get 50 CEUs per reporting period. And then typically your employer has you go through many emergency action plan training or, practicing with the Epi-Pen or how to properly use a spacer. So the training is ongoing year round.
Alexis?
Another question for you out in the field, Jess. Rebecca James would like to know, are the long-term residual effects of teen sports injuries worse for the younger athletes than the older athletes?
Well, if you do nothing about it, it's going to continue to be there. But the idea of having athletic trainers out there is to, nip that in the bud and not make it a long-term issue, whether you're younger or older. Certainly at my age, if I go out and I ran a race a month ago and I felt it. I don't respond as well as I did when I was 16, 18 years old. And so the idea is, don't wait. Don't think it's just going to go away on its own. You have medical experts at your school. Utilize those people. Those are your athletic trainers. Tell them what's going on. They, like we said earlier, they have 600-700 student athletes that they're in charge of and that they're trying to take care of. Sometimes the parents coming back and telling them, hey, this has been going on for a week. Should it go on for a week? Wow, I didn't even know that they had this issue. Thanks for bringing it to my attention. We can do something about it.
Well, yeah, because I was thinking a lot of kids don't know, especially if you have a quicker recovery time, they may not know what needs to be talked about. I think it does take good communication with you, asking the right questions, and them knowing, what's something that could cause a long-term problem versus one that might just go away and heal itself. So that can be. Yeah,
typically a problem that's there for weeks is not going to go away by itself.
Right.
Typically it's going to be there because they don't slow down. The body doesn't slow down. They're going to keep going out here. They're going to keep continuing to do that, and it's going to pile on.
Keep causing damage.
And all of a sudden, instead of a smoldering flame, you got a 5-alarm fire in front of you. They'd rather take care of that smoldering flame and just do that, stomp it out, versus get the hoses out and what have you.
Right.
Sorry for the analogy.
No, I like it. I like it. Good stuff. Good. Well, and I like, it's like use the resources. I think that's what I like about this conversation is some people might not even know that you're here for this. So that's really good. Alexis?
I have another question, one more question from Ruth Allen, who wants to know more about the backpacks. And by the way, as someone who needs an Epi-Pen, I love that you guys have Epi-Pens in those backpacks because Epi-Pens are so expensive. Not everybody's carrying one around with them. Ruth would like to know, do all schools across the state have these backpacks for their student athletes?
Are we just the lucky ones?
Yeah, we're probably the lucky ones. And so it's something that, again, going back to Dr. Smith and I sitting down and saying, how do we better prepare our student athletes or our athletic trainers for a problem that a student athlete might have? We do that. Funding is a big issue. And we're fortunate that Dr. Smith and I went back to Charlie Rosansky, our executive director for sports medicine, and said, hey, we have this idea. And he was able to get us the funding to pay for all these. These were purchased by the health system, not by the school. And so some schools just don't have the funding. And so unfortunately, they don't all have this. Now, your athletic trainers are all educated the same way. They know how to utilize this, but sometimes it just comes down to a dollar
So are you saying there might be a few extra things in here that might not be on the field at another school? What makes this so special?
I think what makes it special is that all of it's in one place. Mm-hmm. A lot of us, even before we had these, had a lot of this equipment already at our schools. It just might be 20 years old or a few years older, but this is new. It's provided to us. It's all in one place, so we're not digging through multiple different bags, multiple equipment to try to find the thing that we need in an emergency.
Who's got this? Who's got that?
Exactly.
So you
exactly.
already can tell the difference in the way you do your job.
Yeah.
Just with this backpack.
Absolutely.
And so our physicians, they may call in and say, you know, Miles had to respond immediately for an anaphylaxis situation, but there may be a situation where it's not so bad, and he'll call into one of our physicians and say, hey, I've got this brewing in front of me, what should I do? And the physicians now know this is out here, whether it's for anaphylaxis, whether it's bleeding control, whatever, they know that this is out here. And on the emergency action plan that we'll send to Johnson County MedAct, they'll know that this is out here. They've got a bag with these resources
So they
in
know
here.
how to
Hey,
communicate.
okay, and you're on the phone, you know, making that 911 call, and they're going to say, okay, here's what, I know you have this, do this. Okay. So it's communication. Yeah, I wish all the schools in the state could have this, but I think it comes down to funding.
Well, we got to start somewhere.
Somewhere.
And hopefully they do make their way across the state. Alexis, any final questions?
I think that's all for our questions coming in from our viewers, but I have a question. I would love to know from your experts in the field, as a band mom, I have a son that is out there in the heat with an instrument. I mean, those kids have heavy instruments in the summertime as they go through their drills and stuff.
Yeah.
Are there precautions that people are taking medically at schools when it comes to the heat and monitoring the band students?
Great question.
Yeah. Well, so at least for me, I run my band directors. They get the emergency action plan just like that we've created for our athletes, because just like the mental health emergency action plan is made for athletes and activity participants like band kids. So we have cold tubs out there just if we need, in case they need to be dunked for any reason, and the band directors know how to call EMS if needed, and are also monitoring the heat just like we would for any athletic event.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Alexis, I hope that's the answer you were looking for. I bet it is.
That was the answer. I'm so glad that puts me at ease. And you actually prompted one final question from our viewer. Joyce would like to know, and this piggybacks on what I just asked, do the non-athletes have ready access to these same programs for physical, mental, and emotional health?
What do we know about that?
At least in my work with the Mental Health Emergency Action Plan, it was a big conversation in the Blue Valley School District to have this plan and all of our emergency action plans to be available to all student athletes. So we are educating sponsors of debate, forensics, the theater teachers, as well as our coaches and staff on what to do, because really it can happen anywhere, right? An emergency situation can happen in the auditorium when someone, falls off the stage, because that has happened for us too. So, you just never know. So we're trying to spread it everywhere, not just with our athletes.
Fantastic. That's another great answer, and making parents happy knowing that it's not just athletes. Students are students.
Students are students. There's two medical minds at a school, the athletic trainer, the school nurse. And these two collaborate like this. And so they feed off each other. What are you doing for this? What are you doing for that? How do I take care of the normal student in the school? And they collaborate with each other so that what the school nurse knows, the athletic trainer knows, the athletic trainer knows, the school nurse knows. And so it's a great collaboration between those two.
Alexis, I'm going to get some final thoughts from our guests out here in the field if we are wrapped up with questions.
We're wrapped up for now.
All right. Miles, I'll let you get us started. What do you want us to know?
We're very prepared. We're very well trained. So thank you to Doug and the hospital for preparing us. And if you guys ever need anything, at least in the Blue Valley School District, Shawnee Mission School District, DeSoto, Mill Valley, just ask your administration, ask your student athlete, hey, who is the athletic trainer? And get to know them, because we're just here to help navigate healthcare.
And save lives. You save someone's life.
Save some lives.
So let's just remind everyone of that. Caitlin, final thoughts from you.
Yeah, I think to piggyback off of Miles, we are present at the school to take care of the athlete, both mentally and physically, and we try just within our organization to be innovative in the type of care that we're giving to the athletes so that they're receiving the best care at all times.
Doug, I know you're super proud of this team out here. I'll let you have the final word.
Thank you for saying that. I am. I can't tell you how privileged it is to be able to work with them. And privilege is what I want to leave everybody with. I always tell my athletic trainers, our athletic trainers, the privilege. Your daughter is 9 years old. Before you know it, she's going to be in high school playing sports, and it'll go real fast. You give us the privilege to take care of your daughter. You can't be there 24/7, but you ask your athletic trainer, will you do the best you can for my daughter, for my son? That's a privilege a parent gives you. And I have a 25-year-old that she took care of. And I gave her that privilege as a father to take care of that. And I want our staff to always know the privilege parents give you to take care of their kids.
Wow, love the connection.
Yeah.
I know you all are passionate about it, so thank you so much for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
You bet. Alexis, I'm going to send it back into you to get some final thoughts from Dr. Hawkinson, and then I want to know what's coming up next on All Things Heart. So can you get us up to speed on that?
Oh, absolutely. You're gonna want to watch this episode because it goes right along with yours. But first, Dr. Hawkinson, you're a dad, you're an athlete. You have a lot to say on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, special thanks to our guests there. Such vitally important information. And again, for all students, I think it's important to have those people in those facilities to help. And of course, special thanks to Dr. Johnson, to help us deal with this unfortunate tragedy that our communities and our country continues to have to deal with. So, we'll keep our thoughts and prayers with that community and with those families for sure down in Texas.
And as Jess was saying, we have a really powerful show today. This topic of student safety for athletes and students as a whole is so powerful that we're dedicating 2 shows to it today. So All Things Heart at 10 a.m. We'll start with a frightening event that would be a nightmare for any parent, but because of careful planning by the school with the help of the University of Kansas Health System, a local teen is alive today.
Just an ordinary high school baseball game on an ordinary Monday afternoon in May. And if you were in the stands watching and turned your eyes away from the boy on the pitcher's mound for just a moment, you would have missed it. This is when Brennan Connell's life nearly ends. It's the only piece of video, and it cuts off right here just before Brennan goes limp, collapsing to the ground. For his mom and dad, seeing it once in person was enough. They never want to see it again.
Really, only 1 in 10 kids who suffer a sudden cardiac arrest survive. And
Brennan Connell is that one, because when he doesn't get up right away and dust himself off, as his teammates drop to their knees and start praying, what many of them don't know is there are people nearby who know exactly what to do with the equipment placed exactly where it needs to be to save his life.
You've got to see the show later on this morning, coming up at 10 a.m. on All Things Heart. Not only will you hear from Brennan and his dad, but also a pediatric cardiologist and one of our sports medicine physicians who helped put that plan in place that we've been telling you about all morning long. This plan saved Brennan's life. He's alive today because of it. We're also going to tell you the specific questions you need to ask of your child's school or your teenager or kid's summer camp to make sure that they have a similar emergency plan in place. That's coming up at 10 a.m. right here on All Things Heart.
Thank you so much, Alexis. We will be watching. Well, with summer here, more and more of us, of course, will be spending time out in the sun, outdoors, being active. So what do we do to protect ourselves from injury? Orthopedic surgeon Dr. Kim Templeton shares her advice.
We know that there are some things that put people at risk for injury. If it's an overuse injury, if you are a single sport athlete and that's all you do 12 months out of the year, you're overstressing your joints and your ligaments and your muscles, and you're more likely or more prone to have injuries. If all you do is your sport and you don't do any training between times, whether it's stretching or strengthening training, if you're not doing that, then you're putting your muscles and your tendons and your joints and your bones through stressors that they're not accustomed to. So it's training your muscles and all of your other tissues to be used to that sport. So it's people that are just jumping in and doing the sport and not doing anything else. There are a variety of things that we have looked at in terms of risk factors for having injuries, especially around the knee. It's making sure that you have the appropriate equipment for whatever sport you're doing, that you have the appropriate training to do the sport in which you want to engage, that you, outside of the sport, are engaging in strengthening activities and cardiovascular conditioning and stretching exercises, and maybe work with an athletic trainer or a physical therapist to know what exercises that you need to be doing, to not try to do so many back-to-back activities, but take some time out for your body to rest and recuperate.
Thank you so much for being with us today. We'll see you back here at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Coming up tomorrow on the Morning Medical Update.
It's the sixth leading cause of death in Kansas. We're talking about strokes. I'm Jill Chadwick. Friday, we've heard an aspirin a day can keep the doctor away, but what about for your heart? We'll see you Friday at 8 on these social media channels. Subscribe to our Morning Medical Update and Open Mics with Dr. Stites podcasts. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.